Alright, how's it going everyone? Gamma Fighter here coming at you with another Sylvaneth video, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at Sylvaneth in the meta, specifically the meta Sylvaneth list that's really been pretty prominent since basically the September 2024 Battle Scroll update, and basically when that went into effect in tournaments in like October, we started seeing this list pretty commonly. I mean, it makes it a little bit boring to look at tournament results and stuff because it's pretty much always the same list, or, a variation on it. But it is pretty exciting. The list's been doing very well, and our win rate's been going up. And I think this is also a really good list for beginners. It has Alariel, it has Belthanos, which are big centerpiece models. So if you're not comfortable with painting, it might be a little intimidating to paint those guys. But other than that, I think it's really great for beginners getting into Sylvaneth or getting into Age of Sigmar. So we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into the list from, a beginner's perspective, as well as just analyzing the list itself too. So whether you're a veteran or a beginner, this should be a pretty informative video for you. So let's dive right into it. So here we go. We got a little bit of a table of contents type of thing going on here. We got the overview. So we will look at the meta basically since Age of Sigmar 4th started earlier this summer. We're going to look at how Sylvaneth's been doing. We're going to look at where you can start your collection if you don't already have Sylvaneth, so that's a little bit more for the beginners, and then how you can expand from there. And then we'll go over the list. We'll look at some ways that you can modify it, although there's not a ton of that. And then we'll take a look at the strengths and weaknesses of the list and why it works, basically. Okay, so when Age of Sigmar 4th edition started, even before it started, when we first got the faction preview for Sylvaneth, people were kind of worried, including me, because there were quite a lot of changes. Back in 3rd edition, the way people would play is they basically castle up in the middle of the board, and then they would have one unit that would kind of go teleport out, do a really consistent charge, and then hit really hard and then strike and fade before the enemy even had a chance to hit them back. And that play style kind of got nerfed completely with the way that they nerfed the teleport for Sylvaneth. So for one thing, our charges are really not consistent now to be able to do that. The other thing is that we used to be able to turn regular terrain pieces into basically awakened wildwoods for the purposes of teleporting. So it gave us really good angles to be able to charge in and stuff like that too. Target selection was a lot easier. But I think it was a negative play style. People did not like playing against it, especially beginners. So I think that's why they nerfed it. That really caused a lot of problems with us when it came to just playing the game and trying to win, because people had to figure out a new way to use the same models. A lot of the rules were very similar still for each of the different units and stuff, but people had to figure out how to play the whole army in a different way. And I think people did. They found this Alariel and Belthanos team up type of a play style. I wasn't really thinking about it because admittedly, I mean, for one thing, I'm not a super good, competitive player or anything like that. I really like painting, collecting, and that type of stuff. I like watching the games a lot, but definitely wouldn't rate myself as one of the better players around. But the other thing is, I don't like using the centerpiece models that, you've got one or two models that take up half of your army. That's just not the way that I like to play. So I was kind of, admittedly, I was aware of it, but kind of, admittedly not paying much attention to Alariel and Belthanos, although they are very cool. But anyways, this really it was working quite well, and the Sylvaneth win rate started going up as people started using this style more and turning away from some of the other different ways that people were trying and experimenting with. And then with the September 2024 Battle Scroll update, things got even better. The biggest change that I think of was the Awakened, and I do have a video on that, reviewing how that went. Improving the Awakened Wildwoods, it's a lot easier to place them down now. We're able to place like big clusters of them instead of just singletons as well. And when we do place more than one piece at a time, then it gives us a bigger range to be able to use the buffs and the abilities and that type of a thing. Just really big quality of life changes. So we were at the very bottom of the win rates, and now we're right around 50%, which is really great. especially because I feel like Sylvaneth is a pretty highly represented army. Definitely was in third edition, maybe a little bit less in fourth edition. But when there's high representation, it means that there's people of all different kinds of skill level that are playing the army. So for people with across a broad range of skill levels, being able to get about a 50% win rate overall. Um, that's not official numbers. That's just what I've heard. But yeah, having that means that we're in a pretty good place, pretty good place competitively. So even if you're a beginner, you may be able to have some pretty good success with Sylvaneth. Um, a few other changes happened that didn't really make much of a difference, though. Belthanos went up in points, but it wasn't that much, and he's so good that people just are going to find a way to fit him into the list anyways. And Drika, the Arch Revenant, the Warsong Revenant, and the Tree Lord Ancient all went down. And of those, I think the Warsong is the only one that I see in lists ever, and even then, it's pretty rare. But that those changes kind of helped us to be able to do a little bit better, make it a little bit easier for us to find success. Some things like Alariel's base is bigger than 6 inches, so it was really tough to be able to get her wholly within 6 inches of the Awakened Wildwoods to use the abilities, but probably more importantly, was to get the healing from the faction abilities. But with being able to have a bigger range on the Awakened Wildwoods, that just makes it a lot easier. And Alariel, you're going to see in the list, Alariel is almost, it's a third, or yeah, about a third of the army in terms of points. And then she's also really the one who's taking the brunt of the attention of the enemy. So uh, her being able to heal easier is a pretty big advantage. So moving on. So if you are interested in Sylvaneth, I can recommend this without any hesitation. Pick up the Spearhead box. So first of all, I do have a video where I covered some of the discount boxes that are available and the kind of value that they have. And I'm pretty sure, spoiler alert, but I'm pretty sure the Spearhead was the highest value that I talked about there. And it was a couple of months ago too, so the meta wasn't fully settled yet, and I think the meta has kind of borne this out, vindicated me here that the Spearhead is a super good value. So it's about $125, a little bit more with tax probably. You can get this I think you can get this on Amazon for this price, and certainly other like nationwide retailers do have it for this price, so it should be readily available. This comes with a Tree Lord. You can build it as the Spirit of Durthu or a Tree Lord Ancient. I recommend the Spirit of Durthu. It comes with 3 Kurnoth Hunters. It can be built with bows or swords. You can do either one, and we can talk about that in a little bit when we look at the list. It comes with Tree Revenants, and these first 3 units are meta right now. The Tree Lord, the Spirit of Durthu, is a really good unit, very efficient for the points cost, nice big body. It's used in the meta list. The 3 Kurnoth Hunters. Kurnoth Hunters are our best, most efficient source of damage when they're using swords. They're our best use of range damage when they use the bows. So these are in pretty much every list. I'd really have to struggle to find a list that did very well without Kurnoth Hunters. I'd be very shocked, honestly, to see that. And then Tree Revenants are just very good for capturing objectives that are undefended and completing battle tactics. So all 3 of those first units are super meta, and they were in 3rd edition too, honestly. So it's really unlikely, even in 5th edition, in 2.5, 3 years from now, that it's really unlikely that these will be bad units going forward. So I think this is a super safe bet. The only thing that's not super meta is the Branch Witch, but you can think of her as being free because you do get a really good discount by buying the Spearhead box when it bundles together all of these units. So it's really great. This lets you play the Spearhead game mode as well. So it is kind of a lot to paint if you're just getting started. There's quite a few models. The Tree Lord's pretty big, takes a while to paint, that type of a thing. But if this is all that you get, then at least you can play the Spearhead game mode. See if you really are interested in going further with Age of Sigmar if you're a beginner, or see if Sylvaneth are right for you if you play Age of Sigmar already and you're just interested in dabbling with the Sylvaneth. Oh, I already went over this point. The 3 of the 4 units are complete staples. Going to be great going forward. I can't imagine a way that Games Workshop could nerf these 3 units. But I just jinxed it, guys. I'm really sorry. Battle Tome's gonna come out, and they're gonna be awful, right? um, but I like also that this gives you a good mix of units, and thinking more of like beginners here. This gives you the smaller units, the Tree Revenants and the Branch Witch. It gives you some medium units with the Kurnoth Hunters, and some big units with the, well, one big unit with the Tree Lord. It's a good mix, and you do get a big variety of what the Sylvaneth range has to offer. Um, and as well as the variety of different painting projects and that type of a thing. And then you get a pretty good discount here, and it's really hard to argue against this. So this is great if you're a brand new beginner or if you're a veteran to Age of Sigmar, looking at the Sylvaneth. I think Sylvaneth's fun and great in Spearhead, and it's really hard to go wrong here. Now from there, if you don't already have an army, next purchase that you might want to consider is the Blades of Belthanos. Now, huge caveat here is that this is not available online. I've looked, and being able to get this online for retail price is going to be impossible. I have found local stores they have this on their website, but it's local pickup only, so you can't get it shipped to you. $160 is a great price. It would cost, if you bought these 3 units separately, it'd cost $205. So you're saving about $45. So that's why this is a huge caveat. While I'm recommending picking up the Blades of Belthanos, if you find it anywhere, it's likely to be more than $205, although your local shop may be using the MSRP pricing and keep it around 160 or so, in which case it is a good deal. For the meta list itself, though, what you want from here is Belthanos and, once again, the Kurnoth Hunters that are available. And then you can think of it as essentially getting the Bug Riders for free. So if you can't find Blades of Belthanos, you can buy Belthanos separately and the Kurnoth Hunters separately as well. And that will be good enough. It'll cost you a little bit less, actually, than buying the Blades of Belthanos. So, I don't know, I said the Bug Riders were free. Okay, the Bug Riders were really just $12. Bug Riders are super cool. They are, I think, viable. I think there's an argument to say that they're viable for 4th edition. They're not in the meta list, though, and that's really what we're looking at today. They're definitely not required if you want to play Sylvaneth, and they're also not required for the meta list as well. So if you do go ahead and get the Blades of Belthanos for 160, assuming that's even a little bit higher than if you just bought Belthanos and the Kurnoth Hunters, you're looking at about $285 right now, and you've got 1,500 points. And for a Games Workshop game, that's actually really good. Obviously, no paint and no paintbrushes and stuff like that, but that's really not bad. I kind of like that, actually. So, and yeah, we're most of the way to finishing the army here. And so, if you've been paying attention and listening to what I've been talking about, you may know what's next. It's going to be go ahead and pick up Alarielle. Now, you can find her about $142.80, about $145, you say. She's super meta right now. We will go into that in the list building, what's so good about her. She's in the meta list. She's very good. It's a beautiful model. The only reason I would even hesitate picking it up is if you feel like you're not ready to paint her yet. That's where I am right now. I work with numbers. I am not a normally creative person, so I've really been growing in that area as I've been collecting Sylvaneth and stuff. I still don't feel ready to paint her, or Belthanos for that matter. Beautiful models. Yeah, that's definitely a project. And like I said, I'm not super interested in putting her on the game board anyways. But I bet once I do finish painting her, I probably will. I'll probably be stoked to run that meta list here, but someday. Uh, then you are going to want to pick up the Gossamed Archers as well. Yeah, about $55. These guys are also really good at grabbing objectives and completing battle tactics along with the Tree Revenants we got in the Spearhead. So with the other purchases, we're looking at about 2,000 points. And that's under $500. So that's really cool. Like I said, not to beat the drum too much, but for Games Workshop game, this is really not that bad. If you look at some of the, I know I watch a lot of Poor Hammer, and I love their videos about how expensive it is to build the armies, and like trying to figure out what's the cheapest way to build different armies. The combat patrols. Can you just buy a couple of combat patrols and be okay? And be able to get started and stuff. For Sylvaneth being able to just drop under $500. Now, with tax, it's going to be over, but about $500, and you're like, you've got the meta list. That's really good, actually. I really like that. And speaking of lists, let's take a look at the meta list. So here we've got, well, here's the list on the right hand side here. So we're going to be in the battle faction outcasts, and Alarielle is going to be the general because she's the war master. The Kurnoth hunters with bows are generally the other unit in the regiment, and yes, so they're going to be the ones picked to get the season rules, which we'll talk about on the next slide here. Generally, the Kurnoth hunters with bows here reinforced. Then Spirit of Durthu's got his own regiment. Usually he's using Spellsinger and Seed of Rebirth. And then Belthanos in the final regiment with the Gossamed Archers and the Tree Revenants. Now, this is a pretty small list. Honestly, not a ton of units. So anyways, let's take a look at the modifiers. We'll get into the analysis in a little bit. I have seen people bring scythes instead of bows. So that's a choice that you can make, whichever you prefer. And so the scythes are overall a bit more damage output, but the bows, obviously, they have a lot more range than the scythes do. I think generally both units, they do kind of tend to keep close to Alarielle during the battle, so the range kind of does make more sense to me, but perhaps with the scythes you have a little bit more freedom to kind of send them out somewhere to do your bidding. Whereas the bows, they're not really going to be able to charge into something and wipe it out unless it's some kind of chaff. Although they do have pretty good melee combat for what's it called? I guess we'll talk about that later. For shooters, for ranged units, they're pretty good in melee. The other option too is that sometimes people will use Warsinger instead of Spellsinger on Spirit of Durthu. It's a little rare. Spellsinger gives Spirit of Durthu one cast wizard. He becomes a one cast wizard when he's near Awakened Wildwoods. The Warsinger makes it so he can give +2 to the movement characteristic of someone who's, I want to say, within 12 inches of him. So he can give it to himself, and he can give it to Alarielle. And then when Alarielle uses Power Through, she can move an extra 2 inches, which is really helpful. So yeah, people tend to lean towards the Spellsinger, though. Another option I don't see that much, this is probably the more rare one, is you can do Lord of the Clans instead of Outcasts. So Outcasts reduces the enemy control score by 3 when they're in combat with Sylvaneth that are in your army. So that helps a little bit with control. Generally, though, I found that control usually comes down to who kills who, basically. So the control score is not so much of a factor. It may swing things every once in a while, but I'm not crazy about it. But this Outcast does seem to be the one people go for. Lord of the Clans, that gives you 3 healing automatically on Alarielle, Spirit of Durthu, and Belthanos instead of a D3 healing at the end of every turn. You're so reliant on these 3 units not going down because they're basically the whole army, that I feel like it's worth it to go with Lord of the Clans rather than Outcast, because if the Spirit of Durthu's dead, his control score is 0. But if he stayed alive because of Lord of the Clans, then he's got a control score. So I don't know. Those are some choices you can think about if you're going to put together the list. All right, so now we're going to take a look at some of the strengths of the list. So number 1 is Alarielle. Alarielle being in the list is really, really good. She's super good in this edition. And yeah, despite the fact that I said I don't like to play with a centerpiece model that takes up, a third of the points of the army, Alarielle is really good in this edition, and that's why people are using her. So this is my damage and durability spreadsheet. We're going to skip over this for a second, and we're going to take a look at the faction pack at Alarielle. We're not going to go into super detail, but for those who are not familiar with these units, Alarielle has 16 health on a 3-up save. She's got a native 6-up ward, which is really good. quite a bit of bulk here for her. She's a wizard 3. She has a flying move, which is 14 inches. So she's got a huge, big pie plate of a base. So it is hard to stick her in places. But a 14-inch flying move does really help to overcome a lot of that problem. And I'm not going to touch on control a ton here, but just taking a look at the control, this is 680 points of a monster model. It's 5 control. That's why I don't really worry about control that much. You could say Outcasts is the only way that you're going to be able to contest objectives with her, because if you're fighting against one enemy unit, then she has an effective 8 control in that case. People who know more than me are using Outcast. I still hesitate to use it. Yeah. So she's got a ranged attack. It's not that crazy. It's just 1 attack. So you're going to miss quite a bit, but it is for 2 rend, 4 damage. And her attack power is pretty good when you don't consider the fact that she has 680 points. So, it's the same thing with her health. She's pretty bulky. She does pretty good damage, but the fact that she's 680 points means that it's not that good of damage or anything like that. Really, it's the abilities that do a lot of the work for her. So she can add 1 to her casting rolls at the beginning of any hero phase, or she can heal 2d3 at the beginning of any hero phase. So if you're not going to be doing any counter casting and she's damaged, you can heal her. This may be why, maybe having Lords of the Clan to give her an extra 3 healing instead of a d3 healing isn't as big of a deal, because you're already getting 2d3 for her during any hero phase. But I still like Lords of the Clans. She's got her own War Scroll spell. It does some damage. It can resolve Tree Song if it kills the unit, but that's not super important. It's pretty good in terms of damage for this edition. And with a +1 to cast, it's pretty consistent to get off, but nothing too crazy. That's not the reason you bring her. This is really a good reason to bring her. So this is once per turn army. During your movement phase, you can bring a Sylvaneth unit back to life on a 4-up. You can even bring her back to life, which is very nice. And that, yeah. All right, yeah, let's just skip over that really quick and come down to, against infantry, she can do basically d6 mortal damage, ignoring 1 and 2. That's pretty good against infantry. There is quite a bit of infantry in the game right now, so she's got a pretty cool rampage. It's just that it's only limited to infantry, so it's not that great. But it's really the right of life. It's being a wizard 3 and having this ability to bring units back on a 4-up, including herself. So it's not crazy consistent, but if we look at the list, if you bring her back, that's 680 points you're bringing back. If you bring back, Spirit of Durthu, sorry, I clicked and tried to drag. Spirit of Durthu, that's 330 points you're bringing back. Balthanos is 350 points. If you get all 3 of them, you're bringing back more than half your army. If you get 2 out of 3, you're bringing back about half of the army. Kurnoth Bows, you're bringing back 200 points, because it would be half of them coming back. Very powerful ability when it works. Very upsetting when it doesn't work. Especially if you bring her back, you can continue to bring back, attempt to bring back more units. It's just once per round during your movement phase, so you're likely probably going to get 3 to 4 chances to do it, and it's on a 4-up, so it's not crazy consistent, but when it does work, it is very powerful. The other good feature here is Balthanos. That's why, you might have noticed I said that it was this combination of Alariel plus Balthanos. Balthanos having a 14 health on a 3-up save, no ward, but he does have a flying move for 12 inches, so his base is not as big as Alariel's, but it does have that advantage where he can move 12 inches, flying, get around where he needs to go. And same thing with him, and as well as it's the same thing with Alariel, is that he's got pretty good bulk and pretty good damage, but not so much when you consider that he's 350 points. He doesn't have as much damage as the Spirit of Durthu. He's got the same defensive profile as the Spirit of Durthu, but he costs a little bit more. So it's really his abilities that really help make him worth it. So His rampage is also very cool. It's universal. You just have to be in combat, of course. And then on a 2-up, on a D3 2-up, you do that mortal damage, and then you can move him and set him up anywhere as long as he's within 1 inch of the target that you selected to be the target of the rampage. That's a really nice trick. It can get you out of some hairy situations. It can get you into some situations where you can pile into something like a wizard or a priest that didn't want to be in combat. It can get you onto some objectives. This is a very techy, very high skill ceiling ability. There's going to be quite a few times where it just does the damage, but there's going to also be some times, now and again, where you can make a really, really good use of this ability to keep Balthanos alive or, like I said, have some big impact in the game. The other one is that he can automatically turn a piece of terrain into an awakened wildwood and a place of power. So that's a pretty good ability. We start out with 1 awakened wildwood. He can turn 1 piece into an awakened wildwood for our faction ability. Oh, the 1 piece is real. Sorry about that. For the purposes of our faction abilities. And the good thing is that it's a regular terrain piece, so it counts as friendly awakened wildwood. It doesn't actually turn into a friendly awakened wildwood. So while awakened wildwoods can be killed, the piece of terrain will not be able to be killed. There's some maps with like the Star Strike one where terrain can blow up and stuff, but generally people aren't going to be able to just have any unit just fight into that piece of terrain. So it's sort of like a permanent awakened wildwood being on the board, which is very nice. Very useful, good quality of life. But once again, the reason that you bring him is going to be this one, which is the Kurnothi Warhorn. Up to 3 friendly units, Sylvaneth units, anywhere on the map can charge, even if they use the run ability in the same turn. So that really just helps with your mobility. It really helps you get into the places where you want to go. And we're going to touch on this a little bit in tactics, but some of these battle tactics require you to get to locations. They require you to target specific units. They require you to be able to get onto an objective and maybe kill an enemy unit that's on it, something like that. And being able to run and still being able to charge when you've got this 12-inch flying move, when you've got Alariel with a 14-inch flying move, it really increases the threat range of the army when you bring Balthanos. And even it helps a lot on Spirit of Durthu as well, who has a very small movement characteristic. Being able to run as well gives him a much bigger threat range. One way that you can think about it is it's like giving you a 3d6 charge across your whole army, because that d6 run roll would be that third d6. And if you use a command point, you can auto run for 6, which is like a 3d6 charge where one of the 3 dice is automatically a 6. So that's pretty powerful. Really improves the mobility of the army, and movement in a tactics game is going to be really important. And then finally, the bows. This is not as big of a factor now. They did change the way that the priority target ability works, so the bows are not as powerful, but they do have an 18-inch range. They get rend against enemy heroes. You get additional rend against enemy heroes, and they can ignore the guarded hero ability, so they're really good at sniping out weak foot heroes. There's not a ton of those in the game right now in the meta, but they still are a threat against especially heroes, but they can also whittle down enemy units if they need to. And we'll talk a little bit more about the bows in the weaknesses too, though. And then battle tactics. Yeah, being able to complete these battle tactics. Balthanos is a huge enabler to complete the battle tactics, as well with him and Alariel having these big flying movements, being able to run and charge. It's very threatening. And we also have this little package of 230 points, Gossamet Archers plus Tree Revenants. They can complete, and I'm not going to go over all the battle tactics again. I do have a video on that if you want to watch that. But these 2 units can do a really good job at getting you victory points, completing battle tactics. The Tree Revenants have an automatic teleport. as long as they're not in combat, and they can go anywhere as long as they're more than 9 inches away from an enemy. So they can tag things like being able to steal their terrain or take their land as a battle tactic. They can complete that very easily, depending on the army that you're up against. They can also just capture objectives that the opponent left unguarded, getting you free points. And the Gossamed Archers, they also have a 12-inch flying move, and they're very mobile. So not quite as much mobility overall because they lack the teleport, but still very useful to have a combination of one unit that has a very good flying move and one unit that has a universal teleport. The archers also do a little bit of chip damage with their bows, and there's some movement shenanigans you can do to make them more harassy, be able to keep them alive a little bit longer, but still be able to do that harassment damage with them. All right, now we're going into weaknesses, though. We do take a look. One of the obvious things is that there's not that many units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 2 of those are not even combatant units. Those are just, you're trying to keep them away from combat at all costs. So really not a ton of presence on the board. Although, the few units that we do have a lot of presence individually, especially Alariel and Spirit of Durthu. Low control score on these units, like I pointed out with Alariel only having 5 control score on a 680 point monster. That really, you're gonna struggle to win on the control battle. You just want to slay the whole unit, and that's how you win control. And then low offense as well as low defense for this kind of an army. And this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. If we take a look at the units, I can hide some of these columns. This is my damage and durability comparison. Okay, yeah, no, that's good. Chart that I have available. The link is in the description. And we're looking here at the damage output of the various units when, I knew that was going to happen, when comparing them, when they're dealing damage to the different armor saves that are available in the game. The number under the number, oh man, that was a weird way to say that. So this 6 here represents a 6-up save when the unit is fighting into a 6-up save. The number that's directly under the save number, that's the total damage you would expect to do on average. And then the number to the right is the points per damage. Is that right? Points per damage? It's the efficiency of the model, or the unit, sorry. Yeah, so it's points divided by the damage that you're dealing. So it's the efficiency. But if we're looking just at the damage here, we can find Belthanos, we can find Alariel, and we can find the Spirit of Durthu and the Kurnoth bows. So these are the main damage dealers in the army. Well, yeah. Gossamed Archers technically do damage, but I wouldn't consider them main. So these are the main damage dealers in the army, and they're doing okay when you look just at the raw damage, but if we do sort by the efficiency, we're looking at, Belthanos and Alariel are at the very bottom, at least against a 6-up. If we look at going against a 4-up, they're still towards the bottom against a 4-up armor save. So they're around the same efficiency as a unit of Tree Revenants, which is the chaff unit that teleports around. Now, they have the advantage of, being worth a lot of points, so they still do some damage on the battlefield, but just when you're looking at from an efficiency perspective, they're not very good. And you consider that this is about half of the army. It's a little over half, 1,030 points. Half the army is very inefficient points. Then we've also got the Tree Revenants and the Gossamed Archers. Now we're looking at almost 2/3 of the army that is just not really meant for damage output. And even the Kurnoth bows, this is their shooting damage with their combat damage included as well. With their combat damage down here and their shooting damage up here. So this isn't even the raw shooting damage that you would get. I'm not going to change that formula to try and delete that to show you how little shooting damage. I did do a shooting comparison. There we go. This is a bit old. Points not updated, but the points are accurate for the Sylvaneth units. But this is just taking a look. This is the same idea, just the shooting though, for different shooting units from different factions. And if we look, just sorting it by efficiency again, the Kurnoth Hunters are pretty low on this list compared to others, other factions, what they have access to. So, not to, this isn't to take a big poo poo on the Sylvaneth units. This is to just face the reality of this list that's doing very well, by the way. There is a lack of efficiency in the damage and the durability as well. The Spirit of Durthu is one that's very good when it comes to efficiency. So consistently placing in the top 5 for efficiency. The yeah, this is why I mentioned the Kurnoth hunters earlier as well. Whether you're using scythes or great swords, the Kurnoth hunters are a lot more efficient than stuff like Alariel and Balthanos, as well as the bow hunters. So that's something you want to consider when you're thinking about how to build this list. If you want to try the meta list, I'd say try it out with the bows at first for sure. And then you may want to check how it feels with the scythes, because there are a pretty significant number of people running with a reinforced unit of scythes instead of a reinforced unit of bows. And they're just so much more efficient on the damage that it may be worth checking out. But you may find that you do still can have a lot of success with the bows. This is just to tell you a weakness of this army is that these are not the super powerhouse. These are not broken in terms of just the damage profile that they have. It's the abilities. It's a pretty techie army. Well, not techie, finesse. That's what I meant. It's a pretty finesse army. You have to be in the right place at the right time. You can't overextend. You have to use the units very efficiently in your use on the tabletop, because the stats just aren't there on the war scroll to make them super efficient. We can take a quick look here at the durability as well. And if we look at the efficiency here, I do have a video where I go more in depth on this. So if you want to take a look at this chart in more detail, you can look at that video. The yellow highlights here are the conditional wards. That's why that's on there. But I can go ahead and highlight the units for us here. Where'd Balthanos go? Is he just like... There he is. Okay, so... And once again, we see, Spirit of Durthu and Balthanos and Alaria, when we're looking at them from a efficiency perspective of their durability, it's pretty low. The Kurnoth bow hunters are quite a bit higher. They're really quite good on efficiency. They can get a 6-up ward if you plant them on an objective. You give them the... there we go. They're nice and efficient. You give them the bodyguard rule because they're in the general's regiment. You stick them by Alariel. They reduce the enemy attacks by 1, attack characteristic by 1. So they can be pretty tanky. But Durthu, Balthanos, and Alariel, they're not super durable for their points. They're not super efficient on that. But they do have a really good, defensive profile. A 3-up save with 16 health and a 6-up ward is very good. It's just that you can't throw her away. You can't just put Alariel in the middle without a plan and leave her to get, taken apart by the wolves. You have to have a plan. You have to be able to do strike and fade with her or power through with her to get her out of danger. If you do overextend her a little bit, you have to be cagey a little bit with this army. The healing is awesome, especially for Alariel. You can keep Durthu and Balthanos alive for a lot longer than you might expect just looking at the efficiency. But the reason I bring this up is that, once again, this isn't something like Asiarch Bone Reapers, where this army is going to be defined by just being super durable and really hard to bring down. They can be difficult to bring down, but you do have to be careful how you use them. Your use of them has to be super efficient because they're not natively going to be super efficient. just on their war scrolls. Okay, so I think that was everything that I wanted to cover here. Unless I'm missing something. Too bad this isn't live. I can't ask if anyone has any questions. But that's it for me. You know, if I think of anything else, I will do. I'm planning to do another video where we're going to take a look at some ways that you could modify these. So do watch out for that video. Hopefully coming out a little bit soon, before the end of the year, right? um, so I do want to look at what if you don't want to use a Lariel, but you want to use the bones of the meta list. Does that list fall apart? Are there ways maybe we can recreate a Lariel in aggregate? Can we create a list that's still good if we take a Lariel out? We can also look at what about if we leave a Lariel in and we take Belthanos out. I actually see this more often when I'm looking at tournament lists and stuff. So we can look at how does the list function if we don't bring Belthanos. I do want to look at some of the alternatives like that. So if there's anything I missed or if you had any questions, then put those down in the comments down below. Don't forget to like. I think this comment might have been, yeah, this was from a different video idea. But hey, you know, we did talk about if you wanted to start Sylvaneth, you can just start with the spearhead and stuff. So go ahead and feel free to comment down below. How did you start your collection? If you have a Sylvaneth collection, Sylvaneth army, if you're thinking about starting it, are you going to start with the spearhead or do you have other ideas? So yeah. And don't forget to subscribe as well. We do these kinds of deep diving videos here all the time, taking a look at Sylvaneth, always open to ideas that you guys have. And but that's it for me for this one. And until next time, I'll see you in the next one.